I'm Tian Wei, and this is World Insight. As China brings COVID-19 cases come under control, local governments have taken policies to encourage consumers to shop and travel more to start the economy. China seeks to speed up building new infrastructures to amid rising downside pressure. So, could a surge in domestic demand save the day, or would the surge ever happen? I posed these questions to Yao Yang, Dean and Professor at the National School of Development from Peking University. Our conversation starts with the spring blooms in the beautiful garden on the campus. The so-called new infrastructure building.
Right.
Now, of course, that's a terminology. It has a lot to do with building infrastructure related to technology, related to 5G information and things like that. How will that work, particularly for the short term?
Well, I think this is what the central government is doing, right? So this is a technology-oriented, particular 5G infrastructure. I think that's good for the long run. But if you go down to the cities, I don't think they are going to do only new technology, right? They are going to build highways, build bridges, build subways. Those conventional infrastructures.
Earlier, there was a case of a so-called revenge consumption, right? After, for example, health hazard or other issues, people come out in abundance and try to consume because they really enjoyed it.
Right.
But this time it's going to be different because we still do not know.
Yeah, that's a puzzle. Let's just think about the SARS. After SARS, there was really a revenge consumption. We observed that. Before this, I also said, no worry, we're going to have revenge consumption. But no, we haven't seen that.
What about the job market?
The job market is not very good, and I believe we are going to face even more severe situation because we are going to have 6 million university graduates who are going to find a job.
Including some of your students.
Yes, this is the first time our graduate students are having difficulty to find a job. 2 of my master students have decided to postpone their graduation.
So even from the best school, university here in China,
right,
from one of the most well-known institutions here in this school, they have difficulties.
That's right, that's right.
But what about the job market in the country? Of course, we still do not have likely the prediction because things are still evolving. But Professor Yao, what is likely to be the number? We have to be prepared.
Yeah, if you look at the official number, unemployment rate only increased a little bit. I think the key issue here is consumption. This time is very different than the conventional slowdown. China has never experienced the drop of consumption. We have had waves of slowdown, but consumption never declined. But this time you look at the retail, it declined by 19% in the first quarter. That's a huge decline. So this means you don't have demand. If you don't have demand, then companies, particularly those smaller companies that don't have orders, and they're not going to hire people. Right? So there is a chain reaction on there.
Professor Yao, there are different government policies if you look around the world. They try to save the small and medium-sized companies. They try to make sure companies and businesses still keep their people on the job. They have different policies. What do you make of China's approach so far? And how is it compared to some of the other economies? Well,
compared with other countries, China has been quite conservative, I would say. I think that the U.S. Fed started this unlimited QE again, right? I think that's really a bad idea. Of course, this is an emergency action to stop the crash of the stock market. That worked. So the American stock markets, you can see, still growing a little bit, right? Or recovery from this crash. But that's not going to help the economy. right? Because the economy has stopped.
So you're saying the U.S. has been overreacting?
Yes, definitely. I think this is a really bad idea. It's not going to be good for American economy in the long run.
Why not?
Well, it means United States is going to accumulate more debts. Okay, think about the debts. In the U.S., on average, each American now has a debt of about 70,000 U.S. dollars.
Already?
Yeah, already. And this is growing, right? So think about it in 2 or 3 generations. What's going to happen in the United States, right? You are eating up the future generations, right? So this is just a totally careless, reckless action, okay?
But China will probably build it, right? China will buy the debts, the U.S. debts. It has always been, and so it's betting on China to do the same again.
Exactly, exactly. So China in the short run is losing, right? We are paying the bills for the United States. But in the long run, United States is losing access to China and other countries who buy American bonds. Okay, so you know, from the United States perspective, I think the Fed is killing United States.
And how is China going to deal with that?
For China, probably we don't have a choice because we use a lot of American dollars to do our business. Right? So what do we do with the American dollars? Right? So we have to recycle them back to the United States. And it sounds still like American federal bonds are still the safest assets that China can buy.
So this is going to continue, right? The U.S. will do whatever it wants to do, I mean, to its utmost interest for now. And then the rest of the world, China particularly, foot the bills.
Yeah, yeah. I think there's another reason why I believe this is a really bad policy, because it's doing redistribution in the United States and over the whole world, right? So unlimited QE pump up the stock market, and who benefits from this? Those guys in Wall Street. Those guys have never been punished. They were not punished after 2008, and this time they're going to gain again, right? So there is a huge amount of redistribution in this process. The Wall Street is a redistribution machine. Okay, this is so bad for the United States and for the whole world.
But what about the policies? For example, every citizen or everyone inside the United States will get a federal funding for about $1,200, and also to encourage small and medium-sized companies to let them, you know, to apply to the banks, even though the speed could be very slow in terms of action. So what do you make of this, and how is China compared to that? And not only is it just U.S., there's also Europe. Some of the European countries are doing different things.
Well, as emergency action, I fully agree. As a matter of fact, in China, I also encourage the government to do the same, because we have so many people who cannot find a job, right? This is an external shock. No one predicted, and no one could have prevented, right? So this is a necessary step to maintain a normal living standard, particularly for the poor people who don't have a lot of savings. Cities are issuing those consumption coupons, right? So that's very different from cash transfer. Cash transfer means you just give people cash, right? So, and people can decide what they want to buy. Consumption coupon means they actually have a target consumption. Okay. As a matter of fact, most cities use the coupon as a discount coupon. For example, you spend 500 yuan, you're going to get 100 back, right? I don't think that's a very good policy. Probably a better policy is to name the commodities, like cars, like durable goods, other durable goods, like a refrigerator or things. So if you buy I'm going to give you a coupon, and the coupon says this is 500 or 1,000. If you buy a refrigerator, you can use this to pay. Right? So this is more psychological. Okay, so people will say, oh, I have this coupon that worth 1,000 yuan, so I have to use it. But if you say, oh, if you have to buy a refrigerator, then I'm going to give you back this 1,000. Then people
that's
say,
very different.
Yeah, psychologically that's different. In fact, that's not different, but I think there is a psychological effect.
Many, as a result of the quarantine and the social distancing, many of the migrant workers who used to work in Beijing, for example, cannot come into Beijing anymore, right? The localities where these migrant workers originally come from will have to absorb all of these people and try to provide jobs to them. Otherwise, they don't have income. Professor Yao, particularly if we see, cautious measures still have to be taken. We still cannot have so many people circling around the country anytime they want, wherever they want to go. So what would that mean for central-local relationship and also for relationship between different localities here in this country, Professor?
In this process, actually, different cities, different provinces have adopted different policies, right? So we haven't seen a unified national policy, although the central government now is trying to enforce a uniform nationwide policy. I think the national policy should be like this. So we're going to have this uniform called green label, right? So everyone use their mobile phone and just swipe. There's a label, and if this is green, then you pass. I believe the central government is trying to do this. If we can enforce this national policy, that's going to be much, much better.
The green label that he's been talking about is a sign that you could have on your smartphone. If you haven't been to some of the places where there were outbreaks of COVID-19, then you're going to have the green sign on your smartphone, the green label. More than 1 million confirmed cases of coronavirus infections have been reported in the U.S., according to Johns Hopkins University's tally. The U.S. Federal Reserve says the pandemic has already caused a tremendous economic hardship, and the worst has yet to come. So, can the U.S. economy rise from the ashes, and what does that mean for the other economies, China included? And how is cooperation between China and the U.S. from now on amid all of these complexities of geopolitics? Professor Yao also shed some light on this. The pandemic might be the top concern now, but that is not the only issue that we have to deal with. Now, we don't want to forget, before the outbreak, there was the China-U.S. trade dispute. There's the first phase and the second phase already. So how, when dust somewhat settled down, will the original important structural issues coming back? And how will the Chinese economy adjust to that while trying to cater to the evolving situations you just mentioned about the pandemic?
Well, the first phase agreement was a very good one. This is solved the so-called trade imbalances issues, right? I think it's beneficial to both countries. Not just the United States, but also China. For example, China is going to have another stable source of oil supply. The second phase talk is going to be very difficult, but I more see it as an opportunity for China to participate in rule-making in the world. Okay, how to interpret this? Right? United States or the Trump administration does not like the current WTO framework. It wants to have a reform on WTO. If the United States does not participate in the reform process, the reform is not going to go anywhere. U.S. is still the most powerful country in the world. But the United States wants to talk with China. Okay? That gives China opportunity to get into this process. My prediction and we can test it after 1 or 2 years. Okay, if China and the United States has a serious talk about the rules, right, and then those rules are going to become a template for WTO reform. That means that China will become a significant actor in the reform process of WTO.
Now, look at the Chinese economic structure. Does it give China much confidence if things are getting worse, whether as a result of trade war or as a result of the pandemic closing down borders between economies and among economies?
Well, I think the closing down of the borders is only temporary.
Yes, indeed.
Actually, China has a first mover advantage. China has already got more than 1 month to resume production. So, for example, I have a student working in Suzhou, and he told me actually Suzhou is gaining back some of the industries that had already moved out of China. So those industries came back to China again.
Because of the change.
Yeah, right. So I actually don't worry about China's position. People say, oh, industries are leaving China, there is a de-Sinolization in China. No, I don't believe that.
There is one crucial point between China and the United States, technologies.
Right.
Some even say if there were a Cold War between China and the United States, it will be about technologies, at least. So, as a Chinese economist, how do you look at that possibility and the realities of technologies, decoupling, and also the difficulties of cooperation, at least?
We do innovations in many ways. Of course, in the past, we learned from the United States quite a lot, but the world is big enough. We can cooperate with Western Europe and other countries. Okay, so there's still a large room over there. And also because economic ties are still there, so commodities are still flowing across borders. And from that, we can also learn. Okay? And don't forget about China's own strengths. As a matter of fact, some of the areas China already has a leading edge. And the United States and Europe, in some areas, actually depends on China. Okay? So with that, yes, there is a decoupling in technology, but I don't think we are going to live in a completely two parallel world.